Okay, so we've finished the main structure of the veggie patch. We're back in the workshop. We're going to make a couple of gates now. Now there's two gates in the structure. One is the movable gate that goes from section to section each month when you move the chooks. And I'm going to make that this time out of some Western red cedar. Now that's a durable timber, but one advantage is it's light. And Peter and Linda, who are going to own this veggie patch when it's finished, they're not particularly big units, so probably be handy if the gate's fairly light. So that's why we're going to use cedar for the movable gate. And I've also got some hardwood that we're going to use for the external gate. So tonight I'm just going to run you through some of the processes involved in making these gates. Basically all I've done so far is I've cut everything to size. I've got it laid out here on the bench. I'm going to screw this together and then we're going to put a brace in. So I'll just get it screwed together and then I'll show you how to put the brace in. That's the frame of the gate screwed together now. You've probably heard me mention a couple of times during the process, I've mentioned a fixing called a batten screw. This is one here. Now, they have a hexagonal drive. Some people call them a bugle head screw. They're galvanised so they don't rust outside, and they're a little bit heavier than just using a conventional screw. I like them because they're quick to put in and they're nice and strong. So I've used those batten screws to screw this frame together. Now, it really doesn't matter what you make the frame of the gate out of. The first thing you're going to do is form a rectangle, and that's what we've done here. Now, if we go and then hinge the gate off this side, over time this side will sag. So we need to put a brace in there. Now, there's two ways you can brace. We can use a timber brace, which is designed to go in compression, and in that case it would go in this angle from the hinge down here, so that when the weight pushes down here it compresses that member. That's why we can call it a compression brace. The other thing we could do is we could actually use a piece of wire and go from here up to here, and that brace is a tension brace. So if you don't have enough timber, you can brace your gate with wire. I'm going to use a compression brace, and we're going to put that across there. Now, what I've done is I've marked the centre of that piece of timber, top and bottom. We're going to put that over like that, and then trace it, and then cut it, and then screw it in place. Okay, so I'll just quickly show you how to mark that brace to length. I should just say, before you do that, make sure the gate's square. To do that, you just check the diagonals with a tape measure. If the diagonals are equal, then the gate's square. So if you're happy with the gate square, lay it over. I normally lay it over the edge of the bench or wherever I'm working. I've lined up that brace on my centre line into the corner, and then I just trace under there like that. Then when I roll it over, I have the two angles. Hope you can see them there. I have the two angles there that I need to cut. I've also marked that other end. I'll cut those angles and then just drop that brace into the gate. All right, so that's our brace cut. So if everything's worked well, that should just drop in there. There we go, look at that. Lovely. There we go. So I'm just going to put a couple more batten screws in that through there, just to hold that in place, and then we'll be ready to put the hinges on this gate. Just before we go, get into that, I'll just run through the types of hinges we're going to use today. The fixed gate, so that's the gate that goes on the outside of the veggie patch. We're just using these T-hinges. Now these are a good quality galvanised T-hinge, and you can see these ones actually have a brass pin, which means they'll last well in the weather. Now they're just an off-the-shelf item. You've got no problems buying them at any hardware store. The hinges for the gate, now we've actually made up these pin hinges. So we've got this little device which is a bit of flat bar and a bit of pipe which is going to screw onto the actual each bay of the veggie patch. And then we've made up this pin that goes onto the gate. That'll go on like this. And then when they go together, you can see they pivot and that'll hang off there. Now, it's quite a sloppy fit, but that's actually not too bad because when you're lifting the gate on and off, sometimes it's handy to have a bit of play there, so it makes your job a bit easier. One thing I've done with that is with the two pins we've made, make one shorter than the other one, so when you're putting the gate on, you've only got to line up one hole at once. That makes it a bit easier for you. Now, we've welded them up ourselves. If you don't have the skills to weld them up, you can either find a mate who does and get him to sort them out for you. If not, you can buy these type of hinges from the hardware. They're not exactly the same, but they'll still work. So you just need a hinge that will lift off like that and basically pull apart so you can lift that gate out. Like I say, we've made them, but you can buy them off the shelf. A little bit of a waste, but because you're only going to use half of each hinge in each bay. Okay, so I'm just going to screw these on the gate, and then we'll come back and put the wire on the gate, and then that's it, job done. Now the wire we're using today, it's a galvanised wire. The size of the holes is 4 centimetres, that's about 1.5 inches if you're in imperial. And the gauge of the wire is 1.4 millimetres. Now we use that size around the vertical surfaces of the veggie patch. The horizontal surfaces, we're going to use a wire with a slightly bigger hole. This is a good wire because it keeps most of the birds out that are going to attack your veggies. It's also nice and heavy duty for keeping foxes away from your chooks. And it's still small enough that the small birds can get through it, and that's an advantage because they can get in and eat the bugs and things off your veggies. Now when it comes to putting the wire on the gate, it's much easier if you get a few nails and just kind of roughly pin that wire down before you start. We're then going to hold the wire down with these little U-nails or staples, and they're just driven in by hand. So get everything adjusted so you're happy with it. And tack them in. Now, it's quite a painful process nailing all the wire off, but unless you're lucky enough to have a staple gun that shoots the staples in, it's over to doing it by hand. All right, that's all the wire nailed off now. You can see that looks pretty good. So I'll just stand that up. You can have a look. That's our gate, nice and light because it's made out of cedar, and all wired up, ready to go. So I reckon that's pretty good. Should be pretty proud of that if you make one of them. So we're going to run out on site and throw that on, and I'll see you out there.